Bill Maher called out CNN's Kaitlan on the network's bias. Let's watch.
Place where both sides can watch. How do you think you're doing with that?
How is CNN is the place where both sides can watch. And I think, my show is evidence of that. We have lawmakers on from both parties. We'll have Elizabeth Warren on one night. We'll have Ted Cruz on another night.
I don't know if you noticed, but Republicans didn't get to play the Jesus card this time around because it's hard to bring up the Ten Commandments when your candidate spent his life breaking all of them. Trump's commandments are like the regular commandments with LOL at the end. Adultery? Check. Cursing?
Listen, you motherfuckers.
Check. Stealing? Check. Bearing false witness?
Wrong.
Check. False idols? Oh, yeah. He is the world's least godly man. Jesus saw the good in whores and lepers, but if he met Donald Trump, he'd go, sorry, man, that's a pre-existing condition. Jesus healed the blind. Trump mocks the handicapped. Jesus turned the other cheek. Trump grabs your pussy. Jesus turned water into wine. Trump just whines. The Bible says, thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's wife. Trump says, fine, what about my daughter?
I get it. This person can be a bit puzzling at first, but stick with me, and through these videos, you'll start to see exactly who he is and what he stands for. In his latest takedown, he didn't just challenge CNN's Kaitlan, he completely unraveled her argument after she insisted that CNN is unbiased and represents everyone. But before we dive into that showdown, let's start with this clip of Bill Maher discussing Trump.
A lot of people are freaking. You know what? I opened the window today. The sun was still shining. The birds were still singing. My gardener was packing for Mexico. That's different. Hey, I did not vote for the winner. We'll see what the winners do now. They won. Now they have reality they have to deal with. We'll see what they do. See if they live up to their word. Trump says he's going to deport 12 million people. How are you going to get 12 million people back into Mexico? And today Trump said, I'm way ahead of you. Why do you think I left so many holes in the wall?
Buckle up, because this is just the beginning. Let's set the record straight. After the election, he made his stance crystal clear, but rewind to before the election, and his position was the complete opposite. The contradiction couldn't be more obvious. And while the back and forth was unfolding, he didn't just shift gears. He systematically tore apart Kaitlan arguments in the process.
You made press because you were on Stephen Colbert's show, and he said something like, you guys at CNN just report the news straight. And the crowd burst into laughter. Look, I'm on CNN now. I guess we're on it right now. I mean, they show this show the next night. I don't know how we get away with it with all the fucks, but they do. And all these dirty jokes. But I'm glad, and I'm a big rooter for CNN. But that tells you a lot, doesn't it? I mean, how do you guys think you are doing in that arena of like, this is a terribly divided country. We're not only politicized. A lot of people just hate the other side. And CNN, in my view, should be the place where both sides can watch. How do you think you're doing with that?
How is CNN is the place where both sides can watch. And I think, my show is evidence of that. We have lawmakers on from both parties. We'll have Elizabeth Warren on one night. We'll have Ted Cruz on another night. I think lawmakers from both parties should take questions, and you should push both of them. But on CNN being a place of credibility, I mean, look at what just happened in Chicago. We had 300 people from CNN on the ground covering that convention. There were several reporters from just our team alone on the floor, bringing it in real time to people. And I think CNN puts resources behind things and just brings a level of news that you don't get anywhere else.
Yes, you've made it clear. Lies get us nowhere. But speaking of misinformation, let's talk about you, MSNBC, and other media outlets that thrive on sensationalism, pushing narratives that often defy reality. Fear-mongering has become the default strategy. But let's be honest, Kaitlan, your so-called news isn't drawing the audience it once did. For the first time ever, Bill Maher pulled back the curtain, exposing how Kamala Harris's speech was manipulated manipulated to fit a certain agenda. And yet, despite having reporters in the room, CNN and MSNBC conveniently chose to sidestep the truth. They were there, they saw it happen, but when it came time to report, silence. It's no surprise people are starting to see through the cracks. The media landscape is shifting, and viewers are no longer blindly accepting curated narratives. The road ahead. Well, let's just say it doesn't look good for those still clinging to their old ways.
Middle of the road. That's what I hear for 15 minutes, is it's great, and then Lonely Scott. It does look, I mean, and when you see the path, it does look like tokenism. It's kind of like the same as The View. It's like it's almost better to have nobody there, like MSNBC, than to have this.
Well, I don't think you can say.
For the first time ever, Bill Maher's audience seems to be in complete agreement on something, because frankly, it's just common sense. Now, I'm not saying Maher is a hardliner by any means, but he's definitely not a conservative either. Lately though, it feels like he's sending a wake-up call to the left, pushing them to face some uncomfortable truths. Don't just take my word for it, watch this clip and see for yourself.
In October 2023, in which you warned the Democratic Party of Ruth Bader Biden. You were saying the American people think he's too old. You're worried about this. You had a great line about it doesn't matter if he's a national treasure and has done great things. If you got on an airplane and you heard that Buzz Aldrin was the pilot, you'd get off. I'm sorry for botching your very funny joke, but they didn't listen to you, but you were proven correct.
Yeah, and I felt I had standing to make that case because I had for so many years been the only person I know on television who was consistently railing against ageism. I have been saying for years, ageism is the last allowable prejudice that we can have in this country. You can always do the age jokes. You can always rail on people for being too old. And it was, as I said, a case-by-case basis. Some people at 70 act like they're 100 years old, and some people are like 40-year-olds. But this was a case, okay, where Biden was too old. Having made that case that it's a case-by-case basis, I was now saying, yes, some of those cases are that the person just is too old for the job. And he was going to be, much like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, someone who was seen in history as one who stayed at the fair too long and cost his party dearly. And he did. And
I get it. Everyone's tired of this never-ending cycle, but let's be real. Bill Maher hasn't just started calling them out. He's been doing it for years, yet the Democrats keep making the same mistakes, like a broken record stuck on repeat. It's almost painful to watch, and if you think I'm exaggerating, just wait until you see this next clip where...
I've read your tweets like about Kamala Harris.
Yeah.
Now, I have some problems with her too, but you would vote for Trump over her.
Yes.
Tell me why.
Okay, so the reason I'd vote for Trump over her is because I agree with him a lot more on policy. He's governed a lot more conservative than I thought he was going to. Okay.
This is Kamala Harris tweeted, "Children are our nation's future. We must listen to them about what they care about and give them a voice in our government." And you wrote, ridiculous. I'm with you. They're children. They don't get a voice. And I think I know what she meant, but it's poorly worded. And you wrote, children should not have a voice in our government. They're children. And you're right. This is where the left drives me crazy.
Let's not even waste our breath on her. She's nothing more than a walking word salad, tossing out half-baked takes with no real substance. There's no point in dissecting her noise when the real story is happening elsewhere. Instead, let's focus on what truly shook things up. Bill's audience, the very people who once cheered him on, suddenly turning against him. And the biggest twist? They found themselves unexpectedly aligning with none other than Ben Shapiro. This wasn't just a simple disagreement. It was a full-blown shift in the room's energy, something you could feel in real time. Bill Maher, known for his sharp wit and unfiltered takes, has always had a loyal audience, one that often leaned liberal but appreciated his brand of brutal honesty. But this time, things were different. The moment Ben Shapiro laid out his argument, clear, calculated, and backed with hard-hitting points, the crowd didn't just listen, they reacted. Nods of agreement, murmurs of approval, even some applause. And as Bill tried to push back, his usual confidence wavered. It was as if, for the first time in a long time, he realized the room wasn't fully on his side. Now let's be clear, this isn't about whether you agree with Shapiro or Maher. It's about a major cultural moment, when an audience, primed to lean one way, suddenly shifts toward a voice they'd normally oppose. It signals something bigger than just one debate. It suggests a growing frustration, a disillusionment with mainstream narratives, and a hunger for something different, something that cuts through the noise. And this wasn't an isolated incident. We've seen it before. Comedians, talk show hosts, and media personalities who once had the unwavering support of their base suddenly finding themselves on the wrong side of their own audience. Could this be happening to Bill Maher? Is his grip on public opinion slipping? Or is he simply evolving, forcing his audience to catch up? More importantly, what does this say about the broader political and media landscape? Are people waking up to the idea that traditional ideological lines aren't as rigid as they once seemed? Are figures like Ben Shapiro making inroads where they were once dismissed outright? One thing is certain, this moment wasn't just a win for Shapiro or a loss for Maher. It was a reflection of a deeper shift in how audiences engage with political discourse. And if this trend continues, we might be looking at a media landscape where old allegiances mean less, and hard facts, delivered with conviction, carry more weight than ever before. So what do you think? Is Bill Maher losing his edge, or is his audience simply evolving? And does this moment mark a turning point in how people consume political debates? Drop your thoughts below, because this conversation is just getting started.
Normal people read that San Francisco has basically legalized shoplifting. They think Democrats have gone nuts. They think, you know, that Ted Cruz guy seems like a real stiff. But at least he believes in the concept of shopping with money. It's not my fault that the party of FDR and JFK is turning into the party of LOL and WTF. Members of Congress tweeting things like cancel rent, cancel mortgage, and no more policing or incarceration, declaring that capitalism is slavery.
And that's exactly why so many people feel betrayed. It's not just about one incident, it's the culmination of the very culture they helped build. A movement that once prided itself on inclusivity and progress has, for many, spiraled into what critics call woke insanity. Even those who once championed these ideals are beginning to push back. And when that happens, the cracks start to show. Take Bill, for example. He's known for his sharp wit and willingness to tackle controversial topics head on, but lately something has changed. He's no longer just challenging the usual suspects. He's taking on his own side, and he's not alone. One moment that perfectly captured this shift, Kaitlan Collins, a journalist known for her composure and professionalism, finally had enough. During a heated debate, she fired back, armed with facts, not feelings, exposing the contradictions and extreme narratives some of her guests were pushing. The tension was palpable. For too long, conversations have been dominated by ideological purity tests, where any deviation from the approved narrative is met with outrage. But this time, Collins refused to play along. She pushed back, not out of defiance, but out of a commitment to truth, a rare stance in a media landscape where nuance is often sacrificed for viral sound bites. And that's exactly why moments like these resonate with so many people. It's not about left versus right anymore. It's about common sense versus extremism. People are waking up to the fact that discourse has been hijacked by the loudest voices in the room, leaving little space for honest debate. But here's the real question. Is this just the beginning of a larger shift? If mainstream figures like Bill and Collins are openly pushing back, could this signal a turning point? Could we be witnessing the start of a media reckoning, where real discussions take precedence over ideological grandstanding? Or is this just another blip in an increasingly divided culture war? One thing is certain, people are tired of watching conversations shut down before they even begin, tired of seeing important issues reduced to slogans and labels, and most of all, tired of the hypocrisy that comes with a movement that once demanded open dialogue but now punishes anyone who steps out of line. So what happens next? Will this pushback grow into a full-blown shift in media narrative? narratives? Or will the outrage machine keep spinning, forcing those who challenge it into silence? The battle isn't just happening on television. It's playing out everywhere, in workplaces, in universities, in everyday conversations. And as more people dare to question, dare to push back, the question remains, is the tide finally turning? What do you think? Are we seeing the beginning of a new era of accountability in media? Or is this just another cycle of outrage waiting to be replaced by the next big controversy? Drop your thoughts below. This conversation is far from over.
But I still think we are owed an explanation from the values voters as to how they could line up behind Trump, a man who loves to say, nobody loves the Bible more than I do, but when asked, couldn't name a single passage. Even Sarah Palin said, oh, for fuck's sake, it's not a newspaper. Trump tried to quote scripture once and called 2 Corinthians 2 Corinthians. As in 2 Corinthians walk into a bar. He also once accepted Jesus Christ as his personal Lord and Tailor. Did that for you. Trump has nothing in common with Jesus, who was from the Middle East. Trump wouldn't even let him in the country.
This is what happens when you push an agenda where it doesn't belong. Sure, Bill is always open to a real discussion, but not to absurdity like this. And that's exactly why he didn't just shut it down. He dismantled the entire so-called woke narrative in one swift move. It wasn't about politics. It was just plain common sense.
Okay, so you would not vote for a Democrat under any circumstance or some circumstance?
I mean, I would say some circumstance, but the Democratic Party would have to stop being insane. Meaning that they would actually have to approach something like moderation in terms of policy and also present a face that doesn't look like people shouting down people at gas stations or entering restaurants and trying to throw them out. I needed 600 officers to protect me at Berkeley.
Okay,
when Joe Biden in 2012 says to Mitt Romney that he's going to put y'all back in chains about black people. This stuff pre-existed Donald Trump. It came from the vice president when he was saying that Mitt Romney, the cleanest person ever, was a guy who was going to put y'all back in chains. To pretend incivility started with Donald Trump.
And that's why so many people feel betrayed. It's the result of the woke insanity they helped create. Even Bill sometimes gets fed up with the overly woke guests who appear on his show.
Teaches some of these students to deal with discomfort. Listen, I'm different than you guys. You know, I'm a black gay man, so I live in uncomfortable spaces all the time. And I think that is a good lesson for college students.
Why? What's going on?
What do you mean, what's going on?
Well, you say uncomfortable spaces.
College is not a comfortable place. You learn.
No, but you say you live in these spaces.
Yeah, I live in these spaces.
Well, I mean, just tell me what.
I'm often the only person of color in the room.
There's only 3 of us here. Yeah. Come on. Come on.